All right. Well, hey there, party people. How you doing? Welcome back. If you remember, I believe not too long ago, I told you that we were going to use the idea of graphing points on the old coordinate plane, those ordered pairs that we were just using not so long ago. We were going to be using that with our patterns. Well, ta-da! Here you go. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. Really. So, what we're going to do is your Build-A-Pattern packet had a variety of patterns. Some had toothpicks, some had little squares, some had circles. We're going to take each one of those and we're going to come up with a graph to describe that pattern. So the first thing you need to know is a couple of terms. That first term is input, and the second term would be output. And we will talk more about this in detail. But the main idea, they kind of are what they sound like they are. The input is a number that I put in to my rule. The output is the number that I get out from that input. So each of your little t-tables on your Build-A-Pattern is going to make up your points here. So let's go through this first one together so you understand what I'm talking about. Let me scroll down here just a touch. So up at the top, I'm going to do Build-A-Pattern 2. And this one was a relationship between the number of squares, or the length of the side of the squares, and the number of toothpicks that it took. So if you look at your t-table, you should have the left-hand side, which is the length, and I labeled it up here for you. That's going to be your input. So if we put in 1, which means a length of 1, how many toothpicks, our output, did it take to make a square with length 1 on each side? And if you look at your t-table, you should see that it is 4. And when I put in a length, if I have a length of 2, so each side is 2 toothpicks, and I make a square, that means I'm going to need a total of 8 toothpicks. And then the other way you can do that is by using your rule. So you came up with a rule of whatever the length is, if I multiply it by 4, that will give me the number of toothpicks. So yours might look a little bit different than mine because I used X and Y. Now the reason why I used X and Y is, can you guess? Oh, do you know it? Can you guess? Think in terms of we're going to graph these points. Hopefully you remembered that each ordered pair, when I have parentheses and a little comma in between, each ordered pair has an X value or an X coordinate and a Y value or Y coordinate. So I called mine X and Y because I knew what was coming. I'm going to make those inputs and outputs and make them ordered pairs. So if I take my rule, and you might have said that the number of toothpicks, and T stands for toothpicks, is equal to 4 times the number or the length of the side. So you might have done T equals 4L. Well, that's the same thing. The only difference is I used Y for my output, which represents toothpicks, and I used X for my input, which represents the length. If you haven't, I want you to change all of your rules, change them so that they are in terms of X and Y. So your input is going to be your X, and your output is going to be your Y. So when you write your rules for the rest of these, change it so it looks kind of like this, X's and Y's only. So if I just plugged and chugged, oh, there's that again, I would say that the length or input is X. So if I follow my rule and I do that Y is equal to 4 times 1, then that's equal to 4. If I do it over here, my output, which is what I'm looking for, and up here this equals 4, my output is going to be 4 times the length, which is the input, 2, which gives me 8. That's how I got this number over here. So I could keep going and just follow my rule. That's the reason why you came up with it, is to make your life easy peasy lemon squeezy. 4 times 3, my length is 3, will give me 12. So that means my output will be 12. Over here, Y equals 4 times 4. My input is 4. A length of 4 will give me a total of 16 T-picks. And 4 times 5 will give me 20 for a grand total of 20 toothpicks. Now, what you're most interested in is this column right here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sorry about that. And this column right here. X's are here, Y's are here. These two numbers are related to each other. 1 and 4, 2 and 8, 3 and 12. They go together. So when I graph those, I'm going to make those my ordered pairs. These are my X's, these are my Y's. So I'm going to put my X value, my input of 1 in the X coordinate place, and the Y value that goes with that is 4. So when I have a length of 1, I use 4 toothpicks. When I have a length of 2, or an input of 2, I have an output, which is the Y value, of 8. When I have an input of 3, I get an output of 12. 4, 16, and 5, 20. We could go on for days doing this, but we're going to stop right there. Now, down below, this gives you your directions on how to label and graph those points that we just came up with. So I'm going to bump this over here to the side. So first, step 1, label the x-axis and the y-axis. That means label with words. What does your x-axis stand for? Our x's represented the length of the side. So your x-axis, you want to write length just below it. Don't put it right here because we're going to put numbers there. Bump it down just a little bit and label that length. This is my x-axis and this is my y-axis. So we have a little bit smaller graph than what we're used to. My y-axis represents my outputs, and those were my toothpicks. So I'm going to label the y-axis toothpicks. If you want to abbreviate, call it T-picks. Why not? Okay, now the next part is we have to number the x and y axis. Now this can change depending on your numbers. So if you look at your x values, I'm just going from 1 to 5. So let's just make this very easy on ourselves. And we're just going to start here. This is my origin. That's 0. So I'm only doing positive numbers here. So this one right here is going to be 1. This one is 2. I only need to go to 5. So this one's going to be 3. This one is 4. And this one is 5. Now, over here, though, my output numbers, I have to go from 4 to 20. And I don't have a whole lot of room on my y-axis. I've got positive numbers, so I'm only going to be focusing on this section of my graph. This has to be 0. I have to get to 20. So hopefully you can just estimate and say, well, if I count by 1, that's not going to fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count by 2s. So I'm going to make each one of these 2. Now, even though these are 1s, it's okay to make these 2s as long as I make all of them worth 2. So this is 2, this is 4, 6, 8. That's each one of these little marks right here. 10, this will be 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. And that's all I need. So go ahead and fill those in. And make them legible. All right, now those are labeled. Check this off, check this off. Step 3, plot the coordinates in the table above. So these are my coordinates. We're going to plot each one of these points. So I need to go to the point 1, 4. So I'm going to have to scroll down here a little bit. I'll do these in a different color. So I start at the origin. I go over 1, up 4. There's 1 point. My next point was 2, 8. So I go from the origin over 2 up to 8. My next point was 3, 12. I go over to 3 up to 12. My next point was 4, 16. Over 4 up to 16. My last one was 5, 20. So I go 5, 20. All right, plotted them, done. Last step, number 4, is connect the points. So if these are, if you can use a ruler, I'm going to use my little fancy schmancy line tool because I can look at these and see, hey, I think these are going to make a nice little connection here. And I'm going to connect those just like that. And then I've got that done. Check, connected my points. And then my last question is describe what the graph looks like. So if I had to describe this right here, what would be a good word or phrase that would describe what this looks like? I'm going to let you come up with that, and then you need to write that word in, or that phrase right in there on that blank. And that, my friends, is all there is to it. So that's the process you need to go through. Hopefully, you need to make sure all of your rules are correct, because you do need to fill in your rule and show your work on how that rule works to make sure that all of these numbers and these numbers match up like they're supposed to. So you're going to go ahead and continue on and do this same process for Build-A-Patterns 3 through 8. So, my friends, you are on your own. Good luck! And let me know if you have any questions. See ya!